Um, can you give me a little bit of your background?
Yeah, sure. So I've been building WordPress websites for a pretty long time. I work at an agency now where most of what I do is sort of helping other developers, clients, that kind of stuff. So we do, WordPress website builds, that sort of thing. We also have Master WP, which is like a newsletter. So we do a lot of like writing and WordPress analysis over there. And, that it's been pretty much WordPress 99% of the job for probably like 10 years now. So, uh, pretty familiar with most aspects of it.
I'm about in the same boat. I've been building WordPress sites since I think about 2011. Um, at small agencies and in-house marketing teams, um, and then most recently for my own micro agency, PRÜF Creative. So I'm actually, unfortunately, but somewhat surprisingly, I guess, have not gotten really into the community contribution component until the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
The pandemic pushing everybody sort of extremely online. Um, it helped me connect better, I guess, with the community itself, where I was a lot of times sort of sandbox and day to days and office environments, right? So this is part of my foray into that. Um, so I guess I'll go ahead and get started. I don't see anybody else coming in. So for the
Do you have like
benefit of
a
what's
link that
that?
I could share too?
Yeah, for this StreamYard.
Yeah, I don't know, whatever's the easiest, or if it shows up somewhere else or.
So there's let me see, a private chat. I'll see if I can private chat that to you. There you go. Did that come through?
Yeah.
Okay.
But is that one I can post online or is that
Absolutely. Yeah, this is
okay?
public. And I posted earlier. I was hoping
Okay.
that Amanda Bowman and Leslie Sims both said that they were going to come, but I know that this is really early for Singapore time. It's about 7:30 a.m. So, okay.
Okay.
So just to recap for anyone who's watching, I'm Tom Finley. I am a WordPress, I would say multidisciplinary designer. I consider myself a visual developer. Some people may argue I'm more of an implementer, but I ride that line between the design and the code. Um, I've been working with WordPress since about 2011, but got really heavy into using Genesis, I would say around 2012 or 2013, and rode that out pretty much until 2020, 2021. Genesis really started to slow down in terms of feature rollouts. And it left me kind of assembling my own block themes. I guess they're what they call now hybrid themes. And then FSE dropped, and it shook my world a bit because there's something about that leap, controlling all of your templates um, via like no code or low code, versus having done it in the code for so long and having like my own sort of snippet framework that I could always borrow from, as I was designing sites. Um, but one area where I really personally feel like FSE has bridged a big gap is the way it sort of frees up the user to, and regardless of who the user is, whether that's an implementer, a developer, or an end user, to graphically make changes without a lot of intervention in code, right? Or significant onboarding with, I don't know about you, Brian, but I also got into building my own page builders with ACF. And I hear that's pretty common still.
Yeah, that's pretty close to what we do. Yeah.
Yeah. And there, there are good reasons to do that and not so good reasons to do that. I've got a university multi-site installed that is still running from when I launched it in 2015. And as part of that in-house team, a request came through to build, custom templates for the academics portion of each department. And one of the biggest downsides of seeing to creating your own page builders in ACF that way is that your content gets trapped in database tables in weird ways that you really don't have a lot of control over unless you are very good at search and replace and regex. And so, that's I would say like one sort of con against the ACF version, which I really do like full site because your content is there, like it's in the database, right? No special places, but there are additional downsides. Changing themes is a big pain point for people, and so I think I caught a conversation between you and Chris Wigman about him. He was experimenting with changing his theme over to FSE, and one of his he had I think two really big valid complaints is that it took him a long time to figure out how to change his header in the new editor, and page size was a big complaint. Now, I don't know if you've inspected Chris's site, but it weighs in at a whopping hefty 35K. So I am not going to profess to be able to achieve a 35K homepage for him in this experiment. Yeah. He's obviously hyper optimized some things. And really, the goal here is just help other sort of, line writing implementers, designer developers, overcome the challenges, and really just some of it's psychological hurdle and some of it's actually just experiential. But get over those hurdles onboarding to full site editing. So if Chris were here, I'd be playing to my audience a little. Tonight we're going to look at sort of a standard flow for basically taking this classic WordPress theme and then dropping it into one of three FSE themes. I'm going to try to go fast, but not dizzyingly fast. Those three themes are going to be Wabi, Frost, and Ino. Okay. So we'll basically clone Chris's homepage, and then if there's time, look into some custom templates. If you have any questions, by all means, feel free to ask. One thing about my setup, I'm working with. So I'm working with local. Let me get to sharing my screen at this point, I guess. This is a multi-site in local, and I have 6 sites. So I have 3 that are kind of like naked, and then I have 3 that I've completed where I've gone through and tried to implement his homepage already, so that I know what the hell I'm talking about. So those are my big caveats. Let me know how this looks to you. I am on a 4K, and I know that can be problematic depending on who's viewing. So actually, that is not what I want to do. I want the whole screen. StreamYard's a little bit cumbersome if you don't have somebody running it on the back end for you. Have you ever used it?
No, I've never used StreamYard. So did you go straight from building sites at like using things like ACF to full site editing, or was there like a phase where you used Elementor or some sort of page builder ecosystem that's already out there?
So confession, I've never actually built an Elementor site from the ground up, nor Beaver Builder. I've inherited a lot of, it's like WP Bakery Visual Composer.
Yeah.
I've inherited a lot of those. Oh, look, it's Chris.
Hey guys.
Hey, Chris.
How's it?
We were just
Hey,
getting ready to
welcome.
roll.
Sounds good.
Yeah, so I've never actually never dealt with Elementor directly. I had a business partner who was big on Elementor, but I just prefer not to, I don't know, incur a lot of overhead. I don't know how to optimize it, you know. So anything that I touched that was pre-baked, it always seemed really hefty. You know, a lot of excessive nested divs, things going on that I had no idea, you know, what they were doing, right? So I avoided it. What about you?
Yeah, I was just curious if people are coming to full site editing from like the page builder world. I'm like the same as you, where we inherit sites on Elementor, you know, Visual Bakery Composer, whatever that one was called, Divi, Beaver Builder, all that stuff. I did have a small time period where I would use Beaver Builder, probably like 5 or 6 years ago. But most, like 99% of what I've done was kind of custom code. So I was just curious if you could compare it to that, or if this is just kind of, you know, vanilla WordPress from before to now.
Yeah, no, this is, I wouldn't say that either, because I mean, I worked exclusively with Genesis for the better part of 8 years, 7 or 8 years at least, right? And then where I felt like it just wasn't strong. I, like a lot of people, found my way into building my own stuff with ACF. But yeah, I guess I was never in the right place, job wise to do the builders either. There was just never a context where it was really appropriate for what I was doing. So never got into it. Yeah. And yeah, so to reiterate, that's like, you know, Chris is an engineer. He's coming at it, I feel like from a pretty like code intensive perspective. Would you say that's fair, Chris?
Yeah, pretty much. I haven't built sites in years, but when I did, it was, you know, 50 gig databases with Buddy Press and, you know, large enterprise type stuff. So any of the full site editing or any of that really has no reason for it.
Yeah. And I'd be curious because I invoked one of my sites. I was employed by Shenandoah University, and it's all running on Genesis, pretty much as it was launched in 2015, and then subsequent sites through 2017. But yeah, you know, I'm curious how that would fare, because the back end was probably about 300 gigs. You know, typical university multi-site kind of scenario. But you know, I would, the reason that I kind of got pushed into the ACF builder was specifically because, you know, the Genesis sites could do a lot as long as you had a widgetized homepage. But once you got past that homepage, it was really difficult to make other pages, you know. And I would have my boss come in and be like, "Hey, I need you to make like another one of these sub pages look just like the homepage." I'm like, I can't do that. I need widgets, right? So I started making my own in ACF. So I'm gonna just re-explain quickly for you, Chris, and then we'll move on. I have a number of sites in a multi-site install ready to go, and you can see here there are a total of 6. I'm gonna just close out all these windows because at this point I've lost my track of what they are. But a few I've already completed. And then I'm going to go back and sort of show you how to rock out these layouts really quickly. And then we'll look at like page size and stuff and answer any questions you have. So today, Wabi was the first one I reskinned. Obviously, there are some differences between the sites, but I feel like it's about the closest, that I could get in about 30, 45 minutes.
That's pretty good.
And that's followed by my second one, which was Frost. And the cool thing about this, and I'll try to demonstrate this for everybody's sake, but I largely just copied what I set up in the content area from the Wabi version into the Frost version. And that is, that's just something that you can't do with an ACF style site, right? And then I know a little bit more trouble. I know is a great, I would consider a framework, the way it's structured, the way that Ellen and Manuel have built it. It's, several themes that run alongside plugins. And the themes largely dictate differentiations and styles and whatnot, and the blocks, all the block functionality is contained in the plugins. So this one, I wasn't able to get it as close as I wanted to, but I'm looking forward to showing you the back end of that page, simply because it's a lot different. I think it's a lot different than what most people are used to encountering, and it's worth a look for what I would consider like the more creative sites. So I'm going to keep the original up on the right hand side. Take a look at what I ended up doing. I did things a little differently with Wabi than I did with Frost and Ino. So I actually, backing up, you have your blog set up to just go to the index page, the blog, like it's really the standard blog page, right? And is this hard coded, this content? Actually, it's this content right here. You hard coded that into that template.
On this particular template, yeah, I think, in this version, I think it is. I've had other versions where I did it as a widget. I'm trying to remember, but I think it's hard coded.
Okay, so that's fantastic, because it gave me an opportunity to actually do it two completely different ways, one of which I hadn't tried, which was in this Wabi complete version, I actually did the same thing. I used the blog template and modified that, and that's how I got this effect. But with Frost and Ino, I actually made completely separate homepages for those. So I'm going to go back to I'm going to go back to my untouched Wabi page, and we'll take a look at that. So I'll go to the home page. We'll see the plain home page there. I'm going to open a new tab, and it's really off to the races. So Chris, in one of your talks, you mentioned the importance to you of flow in your developer tooling, right? And that actually, I felt like it was an important thing to bring up, because some of my initial confusion, or maybe confusion isn't the right word, but friction when I'm building the FSE sites, it's just still, I've been doing it for 6 months pretty steadily like this. It's still a little bit new, right? So what I've learned is there are two things that you absolutely want to do at the start of it, which is come in and change your header. And that's where you had some big trouble. But just, get the basic header and footer stuff out of the way. Set up things like your reading settings, and get all that ironed out so that you can focus really on either your templates or your individual pages. One other thing that we want to tackle first are the theme styles, right? And so I'm not gonna go. There are numerous tutorials and people who will show you how to like manipulate all the various styles contained within these defaults. But the number one thing that I've learned to do is come set your colors. Do it first and do it fast, because it makes selecting overrides at the template and page levels so much easier if you've done this up front. And there's like a flow to this. So I we'll actually just make all 6 of them without even putting in colors or names, because it's much easier to come back and change them than it is to actually do it one by one. So kind of got an assembly line shtick going here. If you have questions or anything you want to ask, it's going to take me a sec. I still see a lot of debates about whether or not like it's semantically appropriate to name things like gray, medium gray, you know. But I've tried that approach with like tertiaries, you know, secondary, tertiary, quaternary colors, and eventually you get lost if you try to be too clever with your color naming. I'm sorry if you can hear that annoying clipboard noise.
You're good, dude.
So when you set this is kind of tied to the theme, right? Like you kind of, this exists here, but if you change the theme, or if you want to copy this to one of your other dev sites, it's just kind of a manual process.
Yeah, that's exactly. I will have to do this for every single one of these sites. There's no way. There's no portability as far as I know beyond, the settings that accompany this theme. It's definitely a downside. I'd love to be able to have some sort of global font or global color option with the block editor, but as it stands, I don't think that that's available anywhere now. So another great tip for when you are getting rolling with modifying, especially, so right now I'm in a template. I'm not editing a page, I'm in a template. And we won't even have edit page for this because of the way that Chris has his site set up. But this is, this is the differentiation. Really, this list view is, I don't know, it's a little more locked down. And so what I learned from listening to a lot of Ellen Bauer's webinars is that you want to turn on your top toolbar, because when you have the floating toolbar, I don't know how to actually trigger the problem. But basically, when you have the floating toolbar, and you're trying to manipulate these menus, it gets a little bit out of control and you kind of want to throw your keyboard. So just use top toolbar in your template editor. It'll make your life a ton easier. And you really shouldn't be digging in too much to like page level. I mean, that's another thing that bears mentioning is you can alter certain page level settings from within the template editor. So it's a bit dangerous. So let me get going with, I'm going to rename the site because Chris's name is not Wabi. So I'll drop his de facto logo in here. And because I was able to, he graciously gave me a copy of his site. All of his menu items are actually kind of set up, but this isn't how Chris titles his links. So it'll be a good way to demonstrate like how you override that right out of the gate. So let's go ahead and delete these icons. I use hotkeys a lot. One thing I would recommend to anybody who's new to FSE is learn the hotkey for removing blocks, and also learn definitely duplicating. The duplicate function, especially if you're using I know themes, is really, really helpful. So I'm going to subtract the search bar too, because Chris doesn't use one of those. And now we've got essentially what he has, which is his logo, his site name, and then navigation. I'll change the background color a little bit. It's important to remember when you're in the theme editor that once you've exited your colors, you need to toggle back into the block settings sidebar. I forget to do that a lot. I think I mixed up my color names here. So we've got the text colors and the link colors. That's another thing for folks who are new to FSE is definitely use the options toggles to see what else is available. I think that's probably one of the more time-consuming portions of getting used to any FSE theme is because everything is pre-configured for you. Whatever the theme developer allows for the different content blocks, what they've set up by default, it varies. So every time you download and try to use a new theme, it's kind of like going on a first date, right? There's a lot of getting to know you that you have to do with these things. Okay, so the navigation. And Brian, maybe you can speak to this. I don't actually know what they did with the navigation menus. I know that they're, or at least I'm pretty sure they're not accessible the way they used to be under the appearance. They just now in the FSE, I think they just kind of like live here.
Yeah, I think you have to import them. Like if you have old menus on your site, it'll ask you to like import. It'll be everything's classic. If it's not full site editing, they call it classic. So like it'll be like a classic menu that you can like pull in from your site, but it is not it's not quite the same level of features where the old kind of menus, you could really see everything by like post type and content type and that sort of thing and get pretty granular with it. This one's just kind of like a one search and you're just kind of hopefully finding it. And then I think the other alternative that I used to love was going into the customizer and building out my menus, because you could actually like add a new page to the website all in one. So you could like go in there with an empty site and you could just start adding to your menu like about page, contact page, everything, and it would actually build the pages blank on the site for you, and you could just kind of like populate your whole menu, knowing your whole structure, and then those pages would already be there. Yeah, exactly. So I don't think that exists, but that was kind of the classic paradigm.
It doesn't, but I'll show you, I guess, the best hope for that these days is a plugin. But so with this page list, you can see it's got a navigation block element, right? And then under it, it says page list. What we've got to do is override it. So as you kind of explain, this is a classic menu that's been inherited, and we have to tell it to convert into the new style of menu. Chris doesn't have policies and disclosures as a top level item, nor does he have speaking. So I just zap those. One thing I found with these drop downs, you can see that there's a separate sub element that has a drop down menu item underneath it. We need to first delete that sub item, and then we can convert this back to a standard link. And this is cool, a very valuable learning experience, because that's the convert button. I've never had to do that prior to trying to build this out. Okay, so we're pretty close to having a header that looks just like Chris's existing site. Now, you mentioned making a new page, and I find very hard to just simply add an arbitrary link. What do they call these? Custom links. There's a specific name for them. Oh, there it is. Copy email address. So I want to call this contact. I want that typed out, but the system isn't going to let me. So first things first, I'm just going to drop this in here and then correct the text. I find that I don't know what your experiences are. I find that a little kludgy, but there's quite often, you have to get something in Gutenberg. You have to get like a placeholder element before you can do other fun stuff with blocks. And I think that it has the potential to be really frustrating. I know it frustrates me. So that's our header. And Chris, since this is your site, would you say that is a fairly reasonable approximation of your header?
Absolutely, closer than I got when I tried this.
And which
the links are a mess.
I was curious, what theme was it that you tried?
Just 2022.
Okay. That's another weird thing about me, as I tend to stray away from the default themes. I don't really get involved with them. And I know that's like counterintuitive, but I was always so focused on Genesis sites that I never really bothered to onboard myself with whatever the default theme for the release was. So I have a little bias there.
When I built sites, I was Genesis too. For this particular, just to learn it, I had no reason. I've never even heard of, what is this called, Wabi, or the other one that you have. I've heard of Frost, but that's the only ones you've listed that I've even heard of.
Yeah, Wabi is made by Rich Tabor. I think that's his name. And then I Know is made by Elma Studios, which is Ellen Bauer and her partner Manuel. I forget his last name. But as I said, that it's a more of a creative theme build. You'll see it. So this is the second, I guess, like biggest headache inducer for a lot of folks. And I'm going to pop over here really quick to kind of check my work and see what the site tree looks like here on the complete version. So, right, I did rows and columns. And I'm actually going to cheat a little bit, and I'm going to at least copy out this content so I don't have to rewrite it, because that's not fun. But okay, right. So what we've got to do, we have this template part, which is called the loop template part. That's I think what Rich named it. In it, there is a query loop block with pretty standard take on the query loop. Now this, I think, was probably like the biggest bone of contention for a lot of people. We all knew how, or a lot of us learned how to manipulate the queries at a code level. What do you do when you're building them by hand? And it's a lot. I'll be very honest. It's a lot. So my crack at it before was I'm not going to try to reinterpret what was done here. I'm in fact going to go ahead. I'm going to create a group block. Get comfortable with the group blocks. They will be your best friends. They are wonderful little containers. So I did group and then columns. And then here's a column block with, go with this 70-30 offset, and then I can drop, and this is what I mean by filling in the blocks. Just dropping a paragraph block in a blank space is usually the most helpful thing you can do, and then you can paste whatever it is into it. And then I am going to grab your image. Okay, so I mean, this is taking shape, right? We already have the bulk of the top of your site figured out, and while I'm at it, I can just go ahead and set the background to lighter gray and set my text that color. What was interesting, Chris, was one of the hardest things to figure out was how to create this, how to put the social icons right next to a paragraph. And so that was another, I guess, like fantastic learning moment for me. There are containers that are sort of cousins to the group block, which is row. It's really easy to convert. You can see here, you can convert from a group to a row to a stack, columns. And that all basically behaves as Flexbox containers. Brian, are you familiar with how those are coded out? I think they are Flexbox, right?
Yeah, I think they are. That's actually one of my favorite recent features of the block editor are those stacks and rows, and it's basically just Flexbox with a bunch of icons to pick how you're going to do them.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a question.
Go for it.
Can you set the body background color instead of like setting each element's background color? Can you, in full setting, can you say like, you know, I want the whole body to have a certain background?
I believe this will take care of it.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
Then we deal with can't see the footer, but that's fine. Let's see. And then after this, that's a fine. The social icons, wrangling the social icons is a little bit of a headache at first. So I want to build this first one. I'll copy all the ones that we do after this, but I found that the it's not the themes. The CMS wants you to drop a link in here. Shoot, I'll just go ahead and put a null link, and then don't worry about that. But yeah, the social icons just don't want to render out on the front end without some kind of placeholder in there. And you can see that selecting the icon basically just brings up that address prompt, and you have to sort of go back out and select the top level block and then hit add. And that's some, you know, it's clunky behavior that I think that would really negatively impact like a layperson encountering this for the first time, right?
Yeah, that's where that list view comes in handy. Like you really can't do anything in here without that list view open all the time.
Yeah, it's the bread and butter. So changing the social icons to logos only is pretty easy. It's just a toggle, and then we can set an icon color of white here. That takes care of the vast majority of the header of Chris's site. Now I'm just going to throw a little spacer element after this. Now, I think the spacer divider situation is another thing that vexes me frequently, Brian. What are your feelings on that?
Yeah, I mean, I understand why people don't like it. I think it would have been nice if padding and margin were in every block from the very beginning. That's been one of the things that's really stopped me is like I can never get consistent padding and margin from the back end in here to the front end. You switch to the front end and nothing is ever spaced the same as it is there. And it's probably primarily because every block doesn't have the same paddings and margin settings available in the editor. And I think once they get to a place where you can do that everywhere, the spacer block won't need to exist for people who, you know that level of design. Yeah.
Yeah, I echo that sentiment, and I forgot to look at what we had available in Wabi. So we do have the spacing, and the one area where I was also pretty vexed was border selection. So Chris has these really nice subtle borders. They're, you know, it's just a shade of gray between two darker blocks, right? And it sets it off nicely. And that is incredibly hard to replicate with, I think, every theme that I've used. None of them have like a single what's it called? Like not axis, but you cannot set a border for just one side of a container.
Yeah.
And it's beyond bizarre to me, because I mean, we've got all the capability right here, set a 1 pixel border. I can do that, but I can't set it to be at the top. And I find myself deeply questioning like why that is. So I don't know if, and another, I guess, sort of pain point that I've encountered, not only as I've like been going through this process, but building my own sites, is that I don't know what is like a default core behavior in certain circumstances versus what's coded into the theme versus, a new update has introduced additional like attributes I can manipulate. That's and sometimes those end up being breaking changes. So yeah, I just realized I need to set my content containers here, and now I'm good to go. So Chris, are you still there? You're just on background?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay.
I'm sitting in my living room, so the camera seemed inappropriate.
I got you. So the spicy stuff is right here. It's the query loop. I am going to go ahead and I'm going to copy this group and drop it in, because you really don't need to know how to build that. Okay. So the query loop here. Let's see, the way that this is set up, we have the query loop, post template, which is that is a default that appears within the query loop. And then we have a group, a row, and a post title and a post date. Now, this really isn't a default. I'm going to use like a pattern explorer to kind of present what is achievable. Let's see, insert after. There we go. And one thing that another headache, I guess, that is worthy of calling out is that to get to the pattern explorer, you have to use this plus button. There's no other way to get to that from the interface unless you use the Block Explorer plugin, which gives you a little icon like this. That's from Nick Diego. It's a beta plugin, but it doesn't work in the actual template editor. So you have to have the presence of mind if you want to go looking for either like core or theme supplied block patterns. You got to get to one of these little pluses to be able to toggle to patterns. And I think that's in my book, that's a huge oversight that needs to be rectified. So I'm going to go with a standard loop, and then I'm going to work my way back and dissect that. So we know that Chris doesn't use a featured image, and we know he doesn't use an excerpt, doesn't use a separator between posts. You just you're working with a title and a date. The cool thing about the query loop that I would immediately call out for everybody who's sort of, confronted with that dysphoria of dipping into the no code at first is that there are these parts that are immutable, like the query loop and the post template, but you can do all kinds of magical things like situate other code blocks in between them. So like what I'm going to do here is go to insert before, invoke a row, and then I'm going to drop the heading and the date into that row. I think I missed a step. I encapsulated it in a group for whatever reason, but we might not have to do that. We'll see if I have to go back to it. So that title is a bit large. Let's take it down a notch. I did have some issues. I don't know if it was this theme or a different theme, but I could not get the titles to shrink. And what I've found is that a lot of theme developers will add classes under advanced and supply those in the patterns, but you might not necessarily know they're there. So if you find yourself fighting to figure out like why your theme won't do a thing that you want it to do, go under advanced, see if there is a class attached to a given block, and chances are there is, and you can you can change it. So Flexbox controls on the row. So I just spread out the date to the right, and we are most of the way there now to having Chris's site looking like we want it to. Let's see. I think I might need to go into the title to change the colors. The link. There we go. And then we need to make these smaller. And you'll notice that as we change one element, all of them change. So how do we change the number of articles? We go back out to the query loop. We go into the settings, display settings, modal, and we'll bump it up to 12. So that was a pretty quick way of building Chris's homepage in Wappy.
Can you change the date format? The date format itself?
Yeah, I think so. Let's see. So we can go to default format.
That's one thing I couldn't figure out when I tried, so I got to ask.
Oops.
If you uncheck the default format, what happens?
Yeah, there we go. So
okay.
Custom. And then, does anyone know the year format string?
I think just get rid of the Y.
Right
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
I think it's M. Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Oh, yeah.
Point made.
But yeah,
you showed me what I couldn't find the other day. So
there we go. Thanks for that, Brian, because I have had no idea how to do that.
What about like some of the other stuff? Like he has a lot of like when you hover, elements have like a sort of button background effect, or links have like different color underlines and things like that. What's happening is that just like open up a style sheet, make a child theme, or
so I wouldn't make a child theme. I think that it doing so, from what I understand, is entirely dependent on the theme developer and how well they've oriented the theme for child theming. But a lot of folks just have it because, like Brian Gardner will tell you, like, it's debatable whether or not there's a need. Although I think he's come around to embracing a way of containing customizations that don't get wiped out when you change the theme, right? Chris has got, like I said, a lot of these cool little like nuanced design elements, like the borders, the rollovers on the links, and right now you cannot really change that without changing the parent theme or having a way of overriding. What I use is a snippets plugin, and and it basically just injects inline CSS into the header, and I get most of what I want. But yeah, it's not an ideal situation. But I'm glad you brought it up, because that's like one of my favorite things is how Chris's rollovers look, right? And to do that, you've got to do some custom coding. There's just no way to do that in the CMS.
Yeah, there's a few things like the fixed header. I don't know if that's a choice of like theme author, or does this one fix when you scroll? Does this one
no, this one doesn't, and I don't know. So I would imagine if a theme developer wanted to provide like a sticky header, they could easily do so by creating like a class or something and coding that into the initial patterns that the theme gets set up with. One thing I'll cheat a little bit and show you. I keep an entirely separate set of multi-site built out FSE themes to be able to dip into, because I really hate going and grabbing the pattern explorer. So I build all the defaults out that I can see on like demo sites and whatnot, and I keep them contained in this this install. So this is like the I know theme, Solar One, and it's a fairly new theme for them. I'll show you what they do with their header menus. It's different than what a lot of other themes do. So with this menu selected, they actually allow for behavior to change it to a modal overlay on mobile, and you can make it always present. You can disable it completely. And then you see here we have different color options for, say, like submenu items, etc. And then that corresponding behavior for when that's in a modal, and what that looks like. Oh, where am I? I'm in the template editor. Yeah. So what that looks like.
Just curious if you took
is this.
Did you just did the home page,
Oh.
right? Did you check the speaker page at all?
Check your speaker page?
Yeah, when you were updating things.
No.
Okay.
No, you didn't have it on your main menu, but we can take a look at it.
Oh, that's okay. It's built out of some fairly complex pods template, and so I'm just curious if you had any thoughts as to that.
Do you use like
I do.
custom post types for these to store them, or what do you do?
Yeah, there's 3 separate custom post types which function. Really, they function more like taxonomies, but pods it's kind of limited in how it handles that. So I split them into custom post types to list all the talks the way they do.
Yeah, so he's got locations and talks here, and I can go to speaking. So right now, this is your speaking page. It's great,
Yeah.
huh? But like, I don't know, since I don't fully know what you have going on. Let me. Is it?
If you go to my GitHub, you can actually see the speaker page.
That page, right?
Yeah.
So okay, challenge accepted. Let's take a look. Let me get your text so I can actually read it. Now, is this page? So where are your headings generated from? Is that all invoked by code?
Yeah. Hold on. I'm getting the templates. This might be way too much for tonight, anyway. But
well, I can show you. I can show you basically what happens when you want to bring pods custom post type into a post. So I'll just go with simple query loop like we looked at before. Post type, post, change it. Guess what? Not there. You know why? And I encountered this with a client, so I know exactly what the issue is. I just can't remember how to get back to it.
I just dropped the template itself in the chat if you wanted to see what some of that is.
Okay. So you've got to go activate the REST API for every single. Well, this is interesting. You do have it active. So why isn't it showing up? Okay.
Custom table support, maybe?
I think maybe public and publicly queryable would be the.
That would make sense.
So I know about this because I had a client who it's actually I'm more of a volunteer for dcbeer.com, and I'm rebuilding their site, and I'm rebuilding it with one of the I know themes, and they had a brewery finder that was built out in pods, and it took me like a month to figure out the API thing. But once I got it set up, I could bring it into into the pages, and so I have I could show you verifiable proof that it works with pods. But there we go. So would it be event? Is that or a talk? What's the top level?
Oh Jesus.
Yeah, well, here.
I closed that tab that I sent you, or the tab for the one I sent you, because I didn't want distracting tabs in the background. But those are events linked to talks. So only if an event has a talk with a specific category, I believe it is. It's a fairly complex template.
That's interesting. I would be curious to see how you would achieve that.
Check the chat on this and what I'm talking about.
Yeah, because you're like checking the year each one and starting a new list for every.
Yeah, it's a fairly complex template, but that's why it was worth asking. When I rant about WordPress, it's the data structures that I rant about, which is why I had to ask about it on this.
Yeah, and I had to build a page like this. I actually needed to call in a heavy hitter to help me write the loop because it was so complex. But it was for the faculty at Shenandoah University, and they had to be, alphabetized a certain way, and there were certain like the rank of the professors, deans had to be listed first. So there was this entire structure of logic for generating that. I guess it was an archive page. And I can't take credit for that opus. It was somebody a lot smarter than me had to do it. But yeah, I think that probably if if the requirement were that it had to be fully automated, I would be up the creek personally. Like I don't think I don't know how you would replicate an automated list like you have, but what I would probably end up doing is just segmenting several loops out. If I could get the year to display, and then the talks underneath them, that's probably the route that I would go for.
Okay. Yeah, like I said, worth asking. When I played with it myself, I was completely stumped as to how I would do any of this in FSE.
Yeah. I totally understand. Yeah, I don't know if there's like a insert before. Is there a way to call like a category or term description post categories? So I don't think that within the loop that what you have is necessarily achievable. But if you were to wasn't there an archive that listed out all the posts by year?
Yeah,
the blog page.
Just the blog page. So I'm surprised that they didn't provide anything that emulated that, right? Yeah, it's interesting. So I'll just to show you a little bit, like not totally full of crap. Is this DC beer?
Definitely wouldn't think that on any of this. This is all interesting.
So this is crazy town right here. Totally customized, like login screen, etc. And in fact, at first they just wanted me to chuck the brewery finder. They're like, it's not actually that important. I'm like, yeah, but all your SEO. So what I ended up doing was figuring out that that basically Gutenberg, whatever you want to call it, block editor, it responds to archive templates and single post templates in much the same way of just dropping PHP templates in the theme file, right? And that makes sense. So I just added new, or was I able to duplicate? No, I think I just added new and maybe copied the guts out of one of the existing archive pages. And this podcast page is a great example. So on the front end, this pulls up all of their podcasts, but each of their podcasts, has a separate cover, description, and links to all of these various podcast networks, right? So I just bake that right in to the archive page, and I can go change it at any point. The downside is if I needed to change something with the buttons or the headings, I have to do that on each template, but I don't know how you could reasonably code this into a template on like a classic theme, right?
Interesting.
So yeah, this is where I'm seeing like real world uses for FSE that definitely transcend what I was doing with code in the past, or what I was able to do, right? So that's a great example. And then let me see, brewery, I forget how.
Just a heads up, I have to jump off in like just a couple minutes.
I don't know where the brewery finder went, but it's I did the same thing. I just created a bunch of single post templates from nothing, and this is I think one of the ones that went wrong. So getting the right name is important. And yeah, so this is off topic, but I did find once I got the hang of creating templates, it was a lot easier, for my purposes at least.
Makes sense.
So that's Wabi, and really, I think that you could download it and rock it out pretty quickly. I did, I'd never worked with Wabi. I built your site out in about 45 minutes with it.
Pretty cool.
So yeah, and similarly, Frost, I mean, it's literally this simple to get your content into the context of that theme. Let me go back to it. Where is it? That's Wabi.
I will have one question then. What did the front page weights look like?
Aha. Yes, good question. I'm going to create a new page because this is with Frost. I don't want to do the index way, and then I'm going to drop all the content in there and I can come back.
I think that's what's prompted this entire call was me.
It was
about.
So I know, I'm actually surprised at this because when I first spun up a site with iKnow to test it, the homepage that I built was like 100K. I don't know why this is 500K. This is too big for this theme. So there's something I did, either some of the extra plugins I loaded. I didn't clock the weight of these on the front end.
You're also logged in, which could
add
some corrupt.
Yeah.
And I didn't turn off avatars, which that's like low hanging fruit, right? Like that's one of the best ways to lighten up a page. Frost came in the middle, so it's 258. And then the Wabi was 476, which is actually weird because.
And how many? What is that?
One
a dozen plus resources? I think there's 3 on the live site.
Yeah. So that, let's see. We have icons, right? And there are a bunch being called for the admin bar. You've got your default font, which I didn't set a font, but I didn't clear out any of the default theme fonts either. So I know you just went with system for yours,
Yeah.
which keeps it really lean. And then, yeah, it looks like Gravatar is one of those things. So we could, by being logged out, we could definitely knock out a few of those.
Just curious. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's a valid question, because that's like one of the whole reasons. But
your worst case is still better than my best. I was a little over a meg on I think it was like 1.06 meg, and I was like, holy Jesus.
That's just too much for the default theme to output, though. I mean, if that's what most people are going to be onboarding with. For me, I understand your sticker shock.
And you saw the plugin list, so it's not like there's a whole lot of crap loading. I don't have a lot of stuff on that thing.
You have the most felt WordPress site that I've probably ever laid hands on, man. Like, it's really lightweight. And I get what you mean. Your whole thing is like data structure and content, right?
Yeah.
So that's, you're going to see a lot of, if your workflow is dry, you're gonna drive yourself crazy. There are a lot of things that you're gonna be repeating until you get the hang of it. On the back end, though, you can also place your own templates. I mean, the template exporting capabilities are a fair bit better than they were 3 months ago, right? So you can definitely code your own templates to an extent too. It's the syntax takes a lot of getting used to. I'm still not there yet. I can't read block syntax.
What's it written in for that syntax? Is it JSX, or it can't be? It's got to be. Just curious.
So it looks a lot like Twig.
Interesting.
Except I don't know. Maybe I'm talking out of my ass, but I feel like it looks a lot like Twig to me.
That's fair.
So let me I'll just try to get something somewhat complex. Let's see, archive product. Not complex.
These are the block like template files.
Yeah, these are all from iKnow. I'm just gonna open up a bunch of them and see which one's like. No. It's a relatively new computer too, so I haven't mapped all my files appropriately. Go away.
I thought good, man. It was just
there we go. Yeah, no. So it looks like this. You see that? Let me zoom in.
Thank you. I'm old. Okay, so that's just it's like it's commented. Okay, it's just commented HTML. That makes sense.
Yeah, but it functions a lot like Twig, at least in my limited experience with Twig, where all your comments invoke the things that the CMS should do, and then when it gets rendered out, it all gets processed. The thing for me is that the sites that I have, that I've basically ported to FSE have all been lighter than the sites they originated from. So you're I think you're an edge case on the opposite end, right? How do we keep a theme light for people like Chris? And I do believe Rich he's got at least another theme that's supposed to be hyper lightweight, maybe with some markdown incorporation too, if you like writing in markdown. That may be worth checking out.
He's the one
Iceberg, that's what it is. Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah, I haven't played.
Yeah,
he mentioned that because I do. That's one of my other issues with all this is I miss writing in Markdown, but this makes sense because block syntax in general. I didn't realize that was literally just an exported block, so that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and the cool thing is that once you modify a template, you can go into your template browser. If you don't like what you did, you can reset it. But actually, I'm still so new to this. Where is you can actually export.
Yeah,
I didn't load Gutenberg up, so that's probably what it is, right?
Fair.
yeah. I know in the plugin it puts it in the menu. And yeah, those templates they really are just created by the block editor. You know, you couldn't really sit down and write one in your code editor. You just make it in the block editor, and then what's nice is once you select a few blocks and just hit like Command C on your keyboard, it'll actually copy all of that perfectly, and you
Boom.
can just kind of paste it, and you
Okay.
get,
Just like I
and
did.
it's the comments. They have all some JSON with settings. They have all the content. Theoretically, it's just HTML, and you could stick that in see in your browser and just open it up and see it just without the styles.
Yeah.
That makes perfect sense. That's always been one of my frustrations with Gutenberg is it's just so bastardized good data structure.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I would like to see, I won't do it now, but I'd like to see like what a complex page like Chris is speaking would look like code wise on the template side. Right.
Yeah, I feel like you'd have to create custom blocks for that. I don't think there's any way you could do it with the standard blocks. I think you'd have to start writing blocks yourself.
And then, I mean, you do still have a functions file, and you can stick stuff in includes folders, right? Like this is I know has done that. They use them differently. It's not for templates, but you can still write PHP. I think it's just a matter of knowing like what you can get away with, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the hard part is the block editor is still going to pull, like, if you want to be able to mess with things in the block editor, you still have to write it for the block editor. So say you wanted to like do all your queries in PHP and stuff, then that's great. But like, you're not going to have the fun of like messing with it in the block editor because you wrote it as a big chunk of PHP and you're going to like, call it in as like a shortcode or something.
Yeah. Well, that's like a whole other topic.
I got to jump off and make dinner, but thanks for doing this. And I would be interested in doing this again, seeing another site or digging into another example.
Yeah, I'd love to take people through whatever they're interested in seeing. I'm probably going to do a broadcast or a recording of a speed run setting up an iKnow site. Chris, if you can hang out, I'll show you a little bit of the layout of this iKnow site. I won't build one in real time.
I'd love to tonight, but I'm hitting my limit with the computer.
Gotcha.
Screen, to be honest.
Yeah, I hear you.
Sorry.
It's all good. Yeah. So let's do it again sometime.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Let me know if you have any additional questions.
I really do appreciate it. That was quite interesting. Frankly, I wouldn't have even thought of looking for other themes with it. I didn't realize all the differences. So right there is something I learned.
Yeah. And that's, it's like sticker shock, right? Like I definitely have gone through that quite a bit myself. I got into Frost, of course, because Brian Gardner and Genesis, and I'm a WP Engine customer, so I'm like, these guys know what's up. And Nick just offhandedly mentioned iKnow in a session, and I got super into that to the point where I've had to pull myself out, like check out other themes, because it took me about 2 months to really get the hang of building my own sites with it. And then I'm like, well, there's a ton of other great stuff out there, so let's see what's up. So I think this challenge helped me. Like, I don't know, maybe we should just start like the series. It's like port my site, right? Like what does it look like? Because I feel like on the customer side, people are making decisions, right? Like okay, hey, there's new WordPress stuff coming out, and developers probably like, we need to get ahead of this. That's what I'm doing with a lot of my customers. And nobody really knows what the impact is, what the overhead is in terms of rebuilding a site to be future forward for the rest of WordPress. Like, so like, how do we migrate people away from their like technical debt fears? And the only way to do it is to show them it's not as hard as they might think it is.
Yeah. If you go that route, let's chat a little bit more, because I don't know if you know this, or not, I'm an engineering manager at WP Engine. I'm working on the Faust framework. So, but I'd be more than happy to try to connect you with the right folks that if you're going to do this, we can help you get some return out of it, whether it be audience or whatever. Make it a little more worth your while and their community's while.
Cool. Well, and I mean, obviously, like, Brian's got some, he's got some ability to get eyeballs, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And feel out, like, I didn't
know if you knew him personally, or if it was just because you were following his work. So
no, it's just because of the conversation we were involved in. Yeah. That's how I became acquainted with you.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, I'd love to, like, I think other people who are probably better gifted at presenting might want to do this and show off their favorite themes, right? Like, we should definitely see if we can get some interest in that. So, all right, guys.
Have a great weekend, gentlemen. Right. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks again.
Cheers.